Hello, everybody. My name is Spencer Walsh. Welcome to today's episode of Newsflash. We have a good show, a little bit of a different show for you today, and it comes, as I'm sure you are aware of, in the context of this massive Israeli-Palestinian war that has broken out over this past weekend, and what has been an absolutely horrific, really, really scary situation to watch. I think it is really, really important before, I believe it's very, very important to give people, when they're talking about the situation, when they're in any way commenting on the Israeli-Palestinian situation, is to really give people, their full context, give people the full understanding and the full, picture of this story, because to do anything else is really a crime against a whole group of people that have been killed, tortured, abused, humiliated, every possible descriptor of any negative thing one government could do to a group of people, that has been done to the Palestinians. And to, to tell this story, to explain this situation without fully giving the, proper context, the proper explanation for all this stuff, it is incredibly, incredibly irresponsible, and really puts people's lives in danger, and is incredibly, incredibly irresponsible. So, as I'm sure, I don't know how many people are aware of this, but it's, definitely not common knowledge in America. I don't know how many people who may be listening to this are aware of it, but pretty much you have the state of Israel, right? The borders of Israel. And within those borders, there are two Palestinian territories. You have the Gaza Strip, which is a 25 by 7 kilometer strip of land within Israel's borders. It's kind of a really small square strip on the Mediterranean Sea, which the south borders Egypt, and the in the north the southwest, I guess you could say, borders Egypt, and then everywhere else is bordered by Israel. So that is the situation. That is the place that, if you don't know, that is where Palestinians have it the absolute worst. They are, inside this Gaza Strip, there are about 2.2 million people. It is what the UN has described as been an open air prison since, they said in 2020 it would become an open air prison. But, obviously it's 2023. The situation has been completely, deteriorating ever since then. Leading up to the events of this weekend, you have a population where 2.2 million people are living in there. Half of them children. Median age is 20 years old. And you have a situation where there's the most densely populated place in the world. There is no ability to leave the Gaza Strip during the course of this Israeli blockade, which is, it's been, locked down in this way, at this specific level of tightness for about 16 years now. So ever since then, people have been trapped there. They've been, in some cases, shot for swimming too far off the shore. They have been, these are people who are regularly in a policy that Israel calls mowing the grass. There is some, Palestinian active resistance within the Gaza Strip that, they are regularly, targeted every 20 years or every 2 years or so. There is some sort of incident that some sort of, provocation Israel does. In 2018, it was a protest that was on the northern border of Gaza with Israel. There was a protest to protest the U.S. moving the border, or the embassy of their embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which we were recognizing as the capital of Israel, which would go against the Oslo Accords. There was under the Trump administration, and there was also protests in Gaza about the right of return, which is the right of Palestinians to return to their ancestral lands, and the right for people in Gaza to leave Gaza. So it was a peaceful protest. You had young kids, Palestinian youth, a lot of younger boys walking, towards the front. Again, the median age is 20, so they're all really just young kids there. And, you can probably picture why that is, with the, the high death rate that exists within the strip. And they were fired upon intentionally by, it was later revealed, intentionally by Israeli snipers to cause mass, or to cause limb loss, to cause maiming. It wasn't even about killing. They know if they just hit once any person in the leg or the arm, that leg or arm would have to be amputated because of the blockade stopping the entrance of medical supplies within the Gaza Strip. In 2021, there was people praying inside one of the holiest sites in all of Islam, which is the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. They were beaten up. They were, roughed up by Israeli soldiers inside the mosque, which is, under, international agreements, is where no Jewish person is supposed to go. Muslims are supposed to have that place to pray, Muslims from all over the world. And the Israeli police went in there, beat people up. Hamas, in retaliation, sent, a few rockets over. And again, this is into a country that has the best missile defense system in the world. Probably, 4 of those rockets hit fields. The rest were intercepted. So then, obviously Gaza kills probably about 300, Israel kills about 300 civilians in Gaza. This is in 2021. Or 300, civilians. And of course, I'm sure they would call some of those people terrorists, but, that is a whole other situation. And of course, that they have been, under the complete blockade, no resources, no nothing, constant kind of mowing the grass operations to, launch a few airstrikes, keep the population there restive, and keep them separate. This is a crucial part, separate and blockaded, both economically, in terms of resources they're allowed to get, and in terms of movement, for some of the people that broke out of Gaza over the weekend, that was the first time they'd ever left those territories, that 25/7 strip of land. So that's Gaza. On the other hand, you have the West Bank. This was an area kind of delineated in in pretty much the Oslo Accords, to where Palestinians under the Palestinian Authority would be free to kind of live their own lives and kind of in a non-contiguous state with Gaza and kind of, live peacefully and coexist. But since then, the Palestinian Authority has been completely neutralized. They essentially serve as a controlled opposition to, that command the faith of no Palestinians, command the support of no Palestinians, because they really don't do anything when Israel allows bands of settlers to destroy Palestinian homes. And sometimes it's, the Israeli government doing themselves. And it is that is what they do there. They come in, there's really scary mobs of people going up against these settlers, supported by Netanyahu government. This is, and sometimes carried out by IDF and, people like that. That is life for people in the West Bank. And more and more of that is going to be settled, and more and more Palestinians are being, forced into refugee camps, which are then being raided. People, throughout both these territories, we've seen civilians targeted, journalists targeted, hospital staff and hospital vehicles targeted by Israeli snipers and Israeli weapons, which are, again, supposed to be some of the best in the world. And then Israel, you're seeing essentially the same thing with settlers happening, doing these, really instances of complete terrorism against Palestinians that's being completely condoned by the by the Israeli Defense Forces. These are people, a beating in the street, a Palestinian store gets roughed up. These are, again, the people that are supposed to be voting for Arab members of the Knesset, and having full equal rights and being treated well in inside the Israeli territory. See, we're not so bad. These are people who are being, regularly roughed up by settlers, and just being treated absolutely abhorrently. And so this is also applies in Israel as well. So this is the situation. So it's kind of these 3 varying degrees of oppression. These are all really, really horrific situations. No specific, there's obviously kind of an order, a divide and conquer strategy, but no one could be considered anyway close to equal with the status that the average Israeli enjoys, especially the average settler who could come in literally from anywhere in the world, prove they have a Jewish grandmother, and then they get essentially access to a free Palestinian house or, a Palestinian plot of land that is bulldozed either with the support of certain, government-backed or non-government-backed organizations, but always, at least militarily supported by IDF and Israeli police. So that is the reality for Palestinians on the ground, both in the West Bank, Gaza, and also, by the way, in Israel proper. Again, these Arab Israelis, that as they like to call them, are, just ask someone like Mohammed Al-Kurd, who really wrote an incredible article about a week ago, just before this all blew over, about he had a East Jerusalem home. This was supposed to be a Palestinian neighborhood for years to come. It was supposed to be untouched by Israel, but what do? They take people out of their homes. They are, they evicted forcibly his family from, or I think they're in the process of an Israeli court battle now. I'm not exactly sure where that stands, but there's videos of in East Jerusalem, people men in these Israeli Orthodox Israeli kind of garb, throwing a woman's stuff out of the window as they move into her house, and she can do nothing but stand outside and just kind of look distressed. There was another story where a man, they were bringing his refrigerator out of his apartment while he stood outside, and he was offered from it a glass of milk or something like that. It was a really horrific, just intent. It's not even so much that they need to shoot or kill. It's just especially in Israel proper, they have the backing, they have the political backing to just do whatever they want and kind of get away with whatever they want. Again, some important critical context that I'm sure a lot of pro-Israel people who may be listening are probably thinking right now. He didn't mention Gaza controls Hamas. They do, and this is the product of Hamas is a militant group and a radical militant group that was, boosted by both Israeli and American interests, actually, to take precedence, especially in the Gaza Strip, over someone like, especially in the 2006 elections and kind of conflagration that happened after, both with the conflict down south and down north up north with Hezbollah, which we'll get to in a minute. It's a long way to go through with this, but they supported the radical conservative Islam option over the secular Fatah option, which had been really marginalized in terms of power in the Gaza Strip. And then, of course, the Palestinian Authority is kind of another situation altogether. That's people who are just kind of really concerned with padding their bottom line and making sure that Israel doesn't get too mad at them, but and really just serving to give Israel the fig leaf of being able to say, oh, we're giving them some sort of self-determination here. Like, this is not a bad situation at all. I mean, understanding these differences here are really, really crucial stuff. And it's especially easy to see how Hamas has been boosted, or not, obviously not once they got into power in Gaza, then they were demonized, but in the critical moment, all it took was one, American-led, Israeli-supported push to, George W. Bush administration, but in 2006 to get these people into power, which, turned out to be incredibly effective for them in terms of a public relations system, because of course they are, radical extreme. In an ideal world, they would be led by what is a very vibrant, the people of Gaza would be led by a very vibrant political civil society, Palestinian civil society that is very secular, very liberal, and very much concerned with ending, the occupation, and Hamas, by the way, I've seen some people out there say, Hamas is unconcerned with ending the occupation. Well, if that was true, if they were just concerned about wiping Jews off the face of the earth, and then you can go down the road of from there, again, all Muslims would be, who support, all Palestinians who support them only care about wiping Jews off the face of the earth, which is, I think, in my opinion, racist and absolutely insane, because I think the more proximal cause would be the fact that they're living under an occupation. Hamas is the only means of resistance they have towards that occupation. There's no support, no aid from the Western world, and the reason why they enjoy any popular support whatsoever is because they're actually able to, launch rockets and make it look like, Israel isn't just brutalizing them without any response some of the time, and actually look like there is somebody standing up for them, and that whole situation. And so it is a whole complete, mess of the situation. But yeah, I digress. But the point is, Hamas, they are extremist Muslim and far right, kind of conservative Muslim, is the way I would put it. And they obviously, I'm sure you've heard it before. If you listen to any American media for a second, they call for, dissolution of Israel in their charter, the state of Israel, so that obviously gives that, the Palestinian, especially on kind of jihadist grounds, which gives people in Israel the perfect messaging that they need to, market this towards a Western audience as look at these horrible Muslim, terrorists. But really, if you look at the reason why they're enjoying popular support, it's not because of this, Hitler-like ambition. It's because they're the only vehicle that, especially people in Gaza, have to in any way stand up to the crimes and, the murderous crimes and the crimes of indignity and all the other crimes in between that Israel inflicts on them on a daily basis. So that brings us, after 16 long minutes, to today, or recently, the current time period where, in a really kind of shocking situation, I started to get reports, was like Saturday, early in the morning, that there has been a massive incursion by Hamas into the southern Israeli territories. Hostages were taken. There's some reports of 100 to 200 people dead, or taken hostage that Hamas has killed at a music festival. They are launching and of course many rockets sent over. I think 7,000 rockets sent over into various places in Israel. That actually were able to get through just because there were so many. The Iron Dome was severely stretched thin, but. To put it in perspective, Palestinian people, crossing out of Gaza, that had never happened before. This was an absolutely unprecedented event because, the Palestinians, for once, actually did something. Like, they had been spent years just getting intermittent rocket fire, occasionally sending rockets back, but, none of them really ever did anything. There was continual, whether it be settlers in the West Bank, whether it be bombs and blockades in Gaza, continued indignities with no response. So, finally there is a response, and it was a absolutely shocking one. Hamas breaking through the borders by, as they say, land, which is, a few guys going in pickup trucks, breaking through the borders, stealing some Israeli tanks, and, driving around Israel, essentially just, shooting everyone they could see, and, seeming to be, looking for targeting generals, because it seems around a third of the people that they've captured have some sort of rank in the Israeli army. But then obviously, and, unfortunately, horrifically, a bunch of civilians too, including some people, as I said before, at a music festival. They have all been put back into or not all, but some are, kind of holed up in border towns. Some now have been brought back to the territory within Gaza, and are now going to be traded in for hostage situations. So, yeah, this is like really the first time, because a lot of what we've heard about Palestine in the past has been sympathy, I feel like. It's been another video of someone's home being bulldozed, another video of a poor, old woman in a hijab kind of standing outside watching her, Israelis laugh and, go through her home, another video of a child dying, another video of an apartment building being, triple tapped and destroyed in an instant. Like, that is what we saw. And really, from the Palestinian side, very little else. And I think a big part of that was, in some way, there was thought, okay, if we can engender aid, we can engender support, we can engender sympathy for our cause by showing, through the power of film and social media, the horrors of living under Israeli occupation. And from there, they got absolutely nothing. This Palestinian resistance of, we're going to, post about it, we're going to boycott, divest, and sanction, that has utterly failed for the Palestinians at home, in Gaza, and all that stuff. So I think a lot of people who, get into the minutia of, what Hamas did, which is, I think it was really interesting the way Shai Ase put it, who is a New York City councilman in the who he at least in a statement, I'm sure he does, but he represents apparently some pretty significant both Muslim and Jewish communities. So he's a Democratic Socialist member, DSA member. He said that Hamas's actions cannot be excused, but can be explained, which I think is a very good way of putting it, because, in a vacuum, if you're looking at this, it is absolutely horrific. It's absolutely deplorable. Some of the videos that you've seen of what's been happening to the people that, especially the civilians, the kids, the young people that Israel just kind of captured and dragged out of that music festival. But then, you look at this, and all these videos that have been coming out that so many people on my, social media feed here in America are getting so righteous about now, and getting so, just wailing and aggravated about now. And it's really horrific. It makes you your feeling in your gut like this is awful. It's the same type of feeling that you get seeing some of those videos coming out of Ukraine and what, Russia is doing to Ukraine. But then you look, me personally, I take a step back and I say, wait a minute, since 2018, when I first really became aware of the Palestinian struggle through the March of Return, for the March for the Right of Return, and the response, the intentionally maiming response of IDF snipers, and I have seen countless videos of, you name it, any horrific thing you could think of happening to Palestinian people. I've seen it time and time and time again. And, some of them I post on my social media feed. I send my piece. Very few people seem to care or even respond. I certainly did not see anyone pro-Israel, don't care, anywhere in between. I certainly did not see anyone posting, especially politicians out there, posting with the same level of fear, with the same level of, heightened anger and outrage and, strong language that. And by the way, white phosphorus was used 2 days ago in Israel, according to video and also, reporters who were on the ground. I was watching last night. I was watching Al Jazeera English, and there was a woman who was in Gaza Strip with a face mask on because of the reports of white phosphorus, and she was coughing during the live shot. So all that stuff, that could take up quite a few social media posts. My Instagram story could just look like little dots, of me posting this with horrible captions and just so much outrage here in the West, just generating that outrage, and if we were treating these things fairly, I would do that. But, I drew attention to some, but definitely not all. But then, to see these people who were silent through all that, did not care, or, actively, kind of justified it, knew about it, but didn't really care, or just were completely ignorant, or just finding out about this whole situation now, which is a fair few people for sure. I have one thing to say, which is, wake up, read some history, and learn about this situation a little more, because boy, is it horrible what Hamas did. And what they did, especially, those people, in those family homes in Israel. Some of those people, by the way, are settlers who probably very recently were living in the house of a Palestinian, or on top of a house where a Palestinian formerly lived. But there was really also, some absolutely inexcusable, really horrific stuff, going on there. Like, that is a horrible situation, but You cannot call it unprovoked and still claim to be in any way serious about peace. Just admit, you are coming at it from one side of the situation. And, if you treat Israelis like humans, if you wail and you cry and, justifiably so, if you express your agony about when they're attacked, when Israeli civilians are attacked, for the first time since 1948, I would like to hear some real of that same outrage, some real condemnation, some real fire for, pick your lot of the Israeli war crimes that have been taking place en masse before the Hamas incursion, well before the Hamas incursion, and even after the Hamas incursion. And I feel like I will be silent, or sitting in silence for a long time, hearing the crickets for a long time, because again, it's some people who I feel like genuinely don't know. They see these videos and they're like, oh my God, like this is a horrific situation, because these videos are spreading a lot faster than the videos of the Palestinians going through the same thing or worse. Hamas captured captives, like paraded through the street. They're holding hostages. They're holding civilians as hostages. 5,000 Palestinians are in jail. 1,200 of those are held without charge in Israeli jails, which I'm sure for Israelis they're nice, but for Palestinians they are really not nice. And so yeah, the stats are 5,000 Palestinian security prisoners in Israeli prisons, including 160 children, 32 women, and over 100 administrative detainees, which are people incarcerated without charge. So each year, approximately 500, this is again for the DCI Palestine here, each year, approximately 500 to 700 children, some as young as 12 years old, are detained and prosecuted in the Israeli military court system. The most common charge is stone throwing. So, and DCI is providing support to them. So 500, 700 Palestinian children, some as young as 12 years old, are detained and prosecuted in the Israeli military system. This is from an organization that represents them in Palestine. So this is from B'Tselem statistics from minors in custody. 147 minors in detention or in prison on what is defined as security grounds. And at the time, IPS, Israeli Prison Service, was also holding 26 Palestinian minors for being in Israel illegally. Again, like these are just hostages, by a different name, and they get to be called a different name because they are Israeli and because they have the power and the ability to have them called prisoners and not hostages. But again, when Hamas, for the first time in many, many years, since 2006, takes hostages, we get all of this massive, massive amount of outcry. When they have stated at least their main goal is to do prisoner exchanges. So again, these people will sit there in front of your face and defend one, but not the other, and not blatantly acknowledge the truth in front of their faces that one is in response to the other. Because again, these are a lot of people. These are people who consider themselves liberal, woke, and if they really came to terms with it, they knew. They would have to realize the things and the people that they are defending are, fundamentally bad to the bone. And that would be, for a lot of these people, an identity crisis. And of course, though, you're seeing some of them who are just dropping all pretense and, getting straight into it, shall we say. Again, I think it's also important to touch on the kind of Israeli response to this. Like, this has been an absolutely shocking moment for Israel. First time ever. Israeli soldiers have been killed. Kibbutzes, towns have been conquered by Hamas. Flags have been raised. Hamas flags have been raised in Israeli settlements. Places that used to be Palestinian villages. Sarat, I'm sure you've heard that in the news. That used to be a 100% Muslim village called Hujj. Wonder what happened to that. I think we all know the answer. There has been that response has been completely panic. Has been holy shit, point fingers. We need to figure out what the hell happened. And what their kind of other response is to cut off food, water, and electricity into Gaza. Collective punishment, by the way, which is a war crime, and prepare for a full ground invasion in which many, many people will die. Hundreds of thousands of people. This is just in. The Israeli military says it's regained full control of the separation wall that was breached on multiple fronts by Palestinian group Hamas. Israeli military spokesman Daniel Hagari said that in the last 24 hours, no one has infiltrated the 40-kilometer wall, though he did not discount the possibility that some of the Hamas fighters are still within Israeli-controlled areas. This is the Israeli separation wall. Israel apparently say that they believe that there are about 100 people that Hamas have taken hostage, 100 again versus 5,000. Again, attending music. Did they throw a stone, or did they settle in? Participate in an Israeli settler project? Which pick your crime there. Either way, they're really being held hostage in what is an awful situation. But as we come to half an hour here, where do we go from here, right? So it's like, where do we go? And it does not look good. Frankly, it just does not look good. We are seeing a very possible likelihood of, once these Israeli, even it'd be interesting to see how Israel treats the Israeli hostages in their ground invasion. We see all this hand-wringing about the Israeli hostages. If it really comes to fruition when they, blow up the place that they were, they knowingly hid him in to, kill Hamas terrorists, which is something that they certainly could and would do. It's been suggested already by Smotrich and Ben Gvir that they just say, screw the hostages, go in. It'd be interesting to see what effect that has on certain elements of Israeli society. But it is looking to be like a complete bloodbath for at least the Palestinians in Gaza. And, what happens after that, it is hard to tell. The extent of that bloodbath, and I think the biggest kind of outside question is, will Hezbollah fully get involved? For those of you, I said I'd get to Hezbollah, but I apologize, I forgot. Hezbollah is a Lebanese militia that kind of operates almost like as a guest to the Lebanese government. The Lebanese government kind of barely controlled by Muslims over a very kind of powerful Christian minority. That minority, not a big fan of Hezbollah. They think, the Israeli-Palestine conflict is not our fight. We already have enough problems as it is, and they certainly do. So if that minority becomes pissed enough, then the Muslim majority controlling Hezbollah controlling the country of Lebanon will have to ask Hezbollah, which is an independent militia that receives most of its funding from Iran, to leave. But if there is some really epic proportion bloodbath, massacre situation going on in Gaza, how will the Lebanese, respond? How will Hezbollah respond off their response? Only time will tell. But I would say for now, it is a really, really horrific situation. I could spend 30 more minutes talking about this, but bottom line is we have to wait for the full Israeli response. It's been brutal so far. It's been some of the people, I've been following people I've been following since 2018, been in Gaza, thinking this may be it for my life. I may not survive the night. They're hitting everywhere. They're hitting everything with airstrikes. But, with the 100,000 troops on the border, it seems like that will be just the beginning. And what those 100,000 troops do will probably be the next big thing to look at. And that's where we'll leave it for today. We're back tomorrow. It's Newsflash.